It's Nolan. It seems I've been missing from the scene, but I'm always coming right back. In the city, just a couple niggas with me, cause I know I gotta watch my back. And I'ma be the realest when the dog falls out. And I'ma still be standing when the sky fall out. They say it's gang gang till it's time to roll out. But when them things bang, where them niggas at now? Real nigga for life. They thought I disconnected from my essence, huh? Rocking shades, but never blocking my blessings, Come from a place where it's dreary like fatal fury. The hardest fight that you face is a jury. We never worried, nigga. Ain't seen a marriage, but violence coming, we grown for it. Gun smoking, new pause. Death and stuff in new force. True gold, blue tour, shooting at your coupe door. Niggas catch a body, then rap about it on TuneCore. That's why I'm distant in my DMs. Rappers trying to be friends, but I don't think to me sin. I've been on some business, building LinkedIn. Signature like in stores. Won't even touch your fucking track without an invoice. Develop habits to elevate in my brackets. I notice most of my peers to get comfortable being stagnant over 10 years. Trying to plant my feet in the ground, but not a taste of victory is about as sweet as it sound. Yeah. It seems I've been missing from the scene, but I'm always coming right back. In the city, just a couple niggas with me, cause I know I gotta watch my back. And I'ma be the realest when the dog falls out. And I'ma still be standing when the sky fall out. They say it's gang gang till it's time to roll out. But when them things bang, where them niggas at now? Yeah. What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, your number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everyone is doing well today on this Sunday afternoon. For all of my insiders on Patreon, I went ahead and gave y'all that gift I was telling y'all about, man. It's a nice one. It's a good one. If you like J Nolan, the artist, I gave y'all a nice collection of music for y'all to check out. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like 70 joints on there. Then there's 70 on there of unreleased material, freestyles, music that I've written for ghostwriting clients, other clients as well. So, if you want to get to that, you could join our Patreon. We got a $3 tier, we got a $5 tier, we got a $10 tier. It's nothing crazy. If you're a member on YouTube, I would also suggest that you join the Patreon because that's where the real stuff is at. You know what I'm saying? You could end your membership on YouTube. It's cool. YouTube takes too much of that anyway. But just giving y'all a heads up. Now, I got plenty of requests from people that wanted to hear me speak on this whole Drake being named in the XXXTentacion murder trial all over again. It was already closed. The three suspects, I believe, actually four suspects if I'm not mistaken, but three of them, I believe, are serving life in prison right now. And one of the young men has come out and filed an appeal for him to be let out. He felt like he did not get a fair trial. And in the midst of all of that, he has named Drake once again. Now, during the trial, Drake was named. I believe that he was served a subpoena. And to my knowledge, I didn't understand all of what was happening because I wasn't like keeping up with the day-to-day goings-ons of that situation at that time. But when I heard that Drake didn't have to show up as a witness or he wasn't being called in for questioning or deposition or anything like that, I figured everything must have been cool. Now, I'd heard for years of people, putting that on Drake. Even Triple X, before he passed or was killed, he said, if something happens to me, I want y'all to understand Drake did it, right? So he had put it out there. They had their ongoing thing. He had his displeasures with Drake. He definitely was throwing Drake under the bus every opportunity he could get. Said a lot of disrespectful things towards Drake because he felt like he had been biting his style and basically hating on him on the low because he had gotten word that Drake liked one of his songs. They were supposed to collaborate on something that never came to fruition. Next thing you know, Drake was putting out music that he felt sounded like his style, right? So from that point forward, he just came to disgrace Drake's name any and every opportunity he got. And he said, if something happened to me, it's that nigga, right? Lo and behold, he was unalived. So being that I didn't have all of the information on hand to just immediately tackle that that subject. We've got this video from Law and Crime Network where they basically summarize everything that's happening. The suspect, well, I won't even say suspect because the nigga's in jail, right? Homie's lawyer, who's not filing the appeal, but he was for the murder trial, his attorney. He's basically coming out and outlining some of the things that happened during the trial that he thought was odd. Some decisions and actions from the judge that he deems to be illegal. And he feels like they didn't get a fair shake in court, and they don't understand why Drake was never called to the fire to have to answer for his alleged involvement. So we're going to watch the video. We're going to listen to this conversation and all of the outline of everything that happened. And then I'm going to just give my thoughts on everything once the facts are presented. Okay? I feel like that's only fair.
You are as guilty as they are because you were an essential part of that crime. When you went to spend that blood money on sneakers and jerseys, you revealed to the court the value you place on the human life that was taken.
One of the men convicted in the 2018 murder of rapper XXXTentacion is now appealing his conviction, and his legal team is focusing a lot of their attention on a major celebrity, Drake. We are going to explain the connections and the arguments as we sit down with Mauricio Padilla, the attorney for the convicted killer, Dedrick Devon Williams. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Dedrick Devon Williams, who's behind bars for life for murdering rapper XXXTentacion, is now appealing his case, his conviction, his sentence on the grounds that he did not receive a fair trial. And this is in part due to what his attorneys say is the exclusion of evidence that pointed the finger or maybe pointed the finger at other people. And one of those people whose name has come up is rapper Drake. So I want to quickly get you up to speed on this case before we get into these new allegations, these new arguments. Maybe they're not necessarily new if you break down this case. So last year, 3 men, including Williams, were convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the 2018 killing of the star rapper. And to be more precise, they were convicted of first-degree murder and armed robbery in connection with the shooting death of the 20-year-old artist whose legal name was Jose Onfoy. Now, the jury deliberated a lot. They deliberated for a little more than 7 days before returning a guilty verdict. This was for Michael Boatwright, Dedrick Williams, and Trayvon Newsom. Now, this murder occurred on June 18th, 2018, outside of Riva Motorsports. It's a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach. It's a suburb of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And XXXTentacion had just withdrawn $50,000 in cash from a bank. He was leaving the store with a friend when his BMW was blocked by an SUV. In fact, surveillance footage from the scene actually captures this shocking moment as 2 masked gunmen, later identified as Boatwright and Newsom, emerged from the vehicle, confronted the rapper at his driver's side window. There is a brief but very violent exchange with one of the men shooting XXX repeatedly. Afterwards, they snatch a Louis Vuitton bag containing the cash that the rapper had just withdrawn, and they speed away in the SUV. Williams was accused of being the driver of that SUV. And the friend, by the way, who was with XXXTentacion during that attack wasn't injured, but he witnessed the murder. And the jury's deliberation was lengthy, but ultimately they concluded that the evidence presented by the prosecution was sufficient. It was beyond a reasonable doubt, enough to convict all 3 defendants. And that evidence included the surveillance footage. It included cell phone videos of the defendants flashing cash right after the shooting. It included incriminating text messages from Boatwright, including one right after the shooting saying, "Tell my brother I got money for the new phone." And then just minutes after that, sending in a separate text message a news article about XXX getting shot. And I also have to mention the key testimony of the trio's accomplice, Richard Allen, who claimed that he was a part of this robbery and he implicated the defendants. He pled guilty to second-degree murder for his role in this killing. Now, as I mentioned, Williams is appealing this decision, and a big focus of this is on Drake. It's also other issues that they're bringing up, so I want to get into it right now. And for that, I want to bring on Williams' defense attorney, Mauricio Padilla. Thank you so much for coming on, Mauricio. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for coming on right afterwards. So I wanted to talk about this with you, and we're going to get into more specifics of the appeal. But overall, big picture, big theme, what are you and the rest of the defense counsel arguing here?
Well, I am not arguing it. I'm not his appellate attorney. I was the trial counsel. So I'm just referencing what Mr. Patanzo, which is his appellate attorney, has stated in the brief. There's so many errors that it takes a while to even break it down. One of the main errors in my opinion in the case, which I had to sit through, argue, and live it, was the fact that in December of 2020, I filed a witness list. The state's reaction to that was to file a motion saying, we want the court to strike all of his witnesses, that's not even something that's legal or that you could do. You have to itemize who you want stricken. You just can't shotgun approach and say, I want all of his defense witnesses stricken. But the state attorney did that. In a hearing that I had to defend, myself to that in that motion, the court didn't grant that, but the court instructed me to file a pleading, which was the nexus in my defense witnesses and what nexus they had to my theory of defense, which I argued was inappropriate because at the end of the day, you're ordering me to give the state a blueprint of what my defense is going to be.
I'm gonna pause it right there. So this guy here who was defending this young man, he says that the judge denied their entire witness list and made him outline everything that he was going to be using in this young man's line of defense, which basically gave the prosecution everything that they needed. Like, oh, we already know everything. You basically came to the poker table and the dealer made you show your hand. The judge being the dealer, right? Like, put all your cards on the table, which means that there's no element of surprise. There's no, your arguments, everything is already put out on the table before you even get a chance. So now they have the jump on you and they have the opportunity to counter and move forward beyond just a counter. And you're pretty much stuck. I don't understand how that works. I'm not a legal professional. Maybe somebody who works in that field or has worked in that field could give me a little bit more information about how that's supposed to go in court. But that doesn't sound, the way that it's supposed to go. I mean, I watched a bunch of TV shows based in the courtroom and I don't recall none of that type of shit happening. Normally it's like, you're supposed to come off the cuff and be able to say some shit that could, perhaps sway the jury right or left, you know what I'm saying, by the presentation of facts, or at least presentation of defense. And then everybody, has the opportunity to question folks and get more details. But I've never seen an instance where an attorney is forced to lay everything out. But of course, that ain't my job. That ain't what I get paid to do. We're going to let this keep rolling.
But I was ordered to do it and I did it. When prior to Mr. Onfroy, which I'll refer to him as X for this interview because his stage name was XXXTentacion, which was the victim in this case. Prior to him being murdered, he had posted on Instagram, if anybody kills me, I'm snitching right now. It's champagne poppy. I'm paraphrasing, but something to that effect, right? So imagine. The decedent said prior to his death, if anybody kills me, it's Champagne Poppy, which is Drake's Instagram name. I laid out in extreme detail all of my defense witnesses list, which included many rappers, because at the end of the day, the victim in this case was a rapper. He had feuds, ongoing public feuds with not only Drake, but a lot of rappers that are either signed to OVO or related to Drake in some way, including 600 Breezy, which is a Chicago-based rapper, and a rapper that's from Toronto by the name of, he goes by Top 5, which is Hassan Ali. And I had to lay that all out in detail. The court was fully aware of my theory of defense. Prior to that, I filed a motion to perpetuate the testimony of Livingston Allen, which goes by the name of DJ Academics, because DJ Academics was friends with X and had posted long YouTube, content regarding this beef. He actually posted YouTube YouTube saying that he was on the phone with X discussing the issue and the beef that he had with Drake, and specifically, X had either said or posted something about Drake's mom, and he had posted a picture of a Drake lookalike with semen on his face, and he wanted DJ Academics to post it on his own site, and he said, "I'm not going to do that." And in that conversation, DJ Academics says that you better be careful because even though, like, and I'm paraphrasing again, even though he's not a gangster, you may be pushing him. As a reaction to that conversation, X goes and says that he takes it out off the post off of his website or off of IG, and he says that his Instagram was hacked. I laid that out in my motion to perpetuate the testimony, which a motion to perpetuate testimony is when you have a witness that is relevant to your defense and that lives beyond the jurisdictional limits of the court, and that you feel that you're not going to be able to bring them into court. So I'm basically asking the court to allow me to go to California or wherever I have to go, depose this individual, and now with his deposition, if he doesn't show up, I could use it in my defense or in my case in chief, right? So I did that, argued it to the court, and the court, in a reaction, basically said, "I'm not going to grant your motion to perpetuate testimony. Just take his depo. Let's just take it." So, okay, fine. I set a notice of hearing, went and served Drake in his castle in Beverly Hills.
There's something that you mentioned, and I want to talk about this. So first of all, there was this deposition that was taken of XXXTentacion's mother, Cleopatra Bernard. She testified that Onfroy had this ongoing feud with Mr. Graham, Aubrey Graham, Drake. She said this feud with Graham included throwing shots at Onfroy and lyrics from one of Graham's songs. You mentioned that controversial statement that he made, "If anyone tries to kill me, it was Champagne Poppy." The question I want to start with as we get into the Drake conversation, were you arguing, are his appellate attorneys arguing that Drake was a part of this killing, that he was the one who did this, or are you arguing that it should have just been allowed, you should have been allowed to present evidence to suggest there were other potential leads that law enforcement really didn't look at into this case? So again, what are exactly we suggesting? Are you suggesting that Drake had a part in it, or that just it wasn't looked into and it shows a sloppy investigation and not a fair trial?
Well, in the brief and in what I was arguing in court is the latter. We are a defendant has every right to defend himself and to show reasonable doubt wherever it may be, and to fully investigate and articulate to a jury an alternate shooter defense or an alternate, a defense where someone else, committed this crime. Am I going to sit here and tell you that Drake was holding a gun or Drake? But the facts, as they are stated by X's own mother, is that she knew about the beef with Drake and with Migos. She knew about the violence between Migos and her son, where there was a violent episode. She knew about 600 Breezy, which is a known admitted gang member from Chicago, going to South Florida and posting on social media saying that he's blicked up, which means that I have a gun, and she was concerned about it. She testified in the depo that she discussed it with her son. She testified that the reason that she wanted additional security with him the day he died was because of this beef with Migos and everything that we're discussing. So it was relevant. And for many months during the trial, January, February, even February 7th of 2023, the judge is agreeing with me. Okay, now there comes a moment and a hearing. He goes ahead and Drake hires, after the judge enters a rule to show cause, basically saying a purge date. You have to appear for depo on this day, or I'm going to do a writ of bodily attachment. He then goes and hires Brad Cohen, a friend of the show, friend of mine as well, an excellent attorney. And Brad files several motion to quash the subpoena, and he files a motion for protective order. We go back and forth, and the judge says, and the first time that Brad shows up to court, he says, "You know what? I'm gonna quash the rule to show cause." He's hired counsel. you guys can communicate and figure out when this step was going to happen. Okay. So we go back and forth. We can't agree to it for various reasons. And I'm not going to get into settlement negotiations
Sure.
on the show, but we can't agree. We go into court February 24th, I believe, on his motions. At that time, James Beard, which is the process server that served Drake, appeared as a witness. And I wanted to show video that he took of the actual attempted service, where it shows Drake's bodyguards or the people that are in front of his house refusing to cooperate. It showed one of Drake's employees kicking the subpoena down the road that leads to his mansion. And the judge didn't allow me to show that. Despite not allowing me to put forth that evidence, the judge did a 180 from telling me to figure it out, coordinate it, take the depo, did a 180, told me, why are you involving him? Granted the motion for protective order, granted the motion to quash my subpoena, allowed Mr. Cohen to argue California law without having a California expert there, and basically kind of chastised me about why are you bringing them into it. And as a matter of fact, we had taken the deposition of one of X's relatives regarding this beef, and she denied it. And the court said in open court, even his relative said that it didn't exist. And I said, yeah, well, she's lying, because the whole world knows about this beef. So for her to sit here and say that she didn't know about it it's on her credibility. So despite all of this, he does a 180. He not only grants the motion for protective order, basically saying that I can now serve him again.
Okay.
And quashes the subpoena, but the state attorney, sensing there's blood in the water, says, Judge, I'm going to renew my motion to strike all his witnesses. Okay? Or tennis, no notice. And he says, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to strike Mr. Graham.
All right. So up to this point, some people ain't going to like what I got to say. I don't really see anything that points to Drake, right? Do they have anybody that can come out and say that he paid them? Right? Because that would have been probably a little bit more probable. But if you're naming Drake and you're saying that Drake did it, are you saying that Drake was one of the masked men? Because you're trying to get your client off. And he was the alleged getaway driver. So he was really accessory to the situation rather than one of the actual, shooters. But I'm trying to see how you're actually removing your client from the scene. Are you saying that Drake was the one that drove off? You know what I'm saying? So some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Now, I know Drake has lyrics alluding to Triple X's untimely demise, right? He has a bar that says, if he held his tongue on that live, he'd be alive, right? And I know a lot of people probably feel like that would give you cause to look into that. But of course, a lot of people are saying that you shouldn't be able to use rap lyrics in court. That was one of the primary things that got Young Thug, you know what I'm saying, that whole trial, that thing was so prolonged and so pushed back, and there was a lot of confusion because the state really didn't have much other than rap lyrics and people that were associated with Young Thug, who basically came to the table, said that he had something to do with it, but then once they actually got into court, a lot of them flipped their narrative and was like, nah, it was all on me, or I lied to y'all, or something to that effect that kind of removed Young Thug from a lot of what they had going on. And they did not have enough concrete evidence because the rest of it was bars. So if we're going to look at these things through the lens of using rap lyrics in court and not having enough actual factual evidence to point somebody, I'm not Team Drake. But I don't really see how you can implicate him or absolve anybody else's involvement and put him in there when there's nothing else that points to him. You know what I mean? Now, again, you can say he's the one that put the money up. That would be compelling to say, hey, there was some other side deal, because they ran up, they took out XXX, and then they ran off with his money, $50,000 that he had just cashed out from the bank. They go out, they spend his money. They start buying clothes, jewelry, phones, jerseys, all type of shit, right? They showing money on their social media posts. They acting like they just hit the fucking lottery. But is there any additional money that came into their possession outside of the 50,000? Did each of them get like another $50,000 wire or something that would say, okay, so not only did they act of, you know what I'm saying, and get 50,000, but they were actually rewarded for successfully taking this man out, right? And then you have to try to track the source of that of those transactions. That I could see it if you want to throw Drake into the mix, but I can't sit here and say because Drake is a lame ass nigga, he lost a battle, he's trying to go to the the legal route after losing to Kendrick Lamar, that I'm gonna put this on the table and just say he's guilty. I can't really do that. You know what I'm saying? I can't say that what this guy is saying to me is really registering. Like, do I think it's odd that the judge basically denied him showing up to be questioned? Yeah, I do think that's odd, right? Do I think it's odd that the judge not only denied it, but said you can't serve him again, and we can't show evidence of the fact that we attempted to serve him with the subpoena or whatever, and his security kicked the paperwork down the road, purposefully not delivering it to Drake? All of that I do find to be odd, right? But is that enough to say he did it? I don't think that's strong enough, and I don't think anybody sitting in that position, because again, if you'll call that for Drake, then we also have to put that on the table for any and everyone else that finds themselves in that same position, that's like could be potentially innocent, but somebody throws their name into the mix and they don't end up having to be questioned. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I know nobody thinks that they would be in that position. You may not ever foresee your brother, your sister, your cousin, your loved one being in that position. But if they're in that position and they end up being protected by not, you know what I mean, whatever it may be, you don't want them to be implicated or even found so-called guilty in a situation just because there's some doubts that this might be the actual person. Just because you doubting this motherfucker don't mean I got shit to do with it. Even if I didn't like the person that y'all unalived, right? I can't sit here and try to flip the script and change the narrative. He does have questionable lyrics. I can't say that that's exactly true. You know what I'm saying? Because if he ain't like the kid and he found, you know what I mean? That speaks to his morals, his ethics. It speaks to him, being a fucked up person, right? Even in death, not being able to respect that and wanting to sling mud on his name. But I can't say he did it. And if there's no source saying Drake or somebody sent these young men some sort of money to solidify that this was a hit job sanctioned by someone else, I can't place him at the scene. I can't, you know what I mean? So it puts me in a weird position, because it's like, all right, y'all asked me to cover this, but what am I really covering? Because it's not much that I can put on Drake.
So he struck in the middle of the trial. He struck Drake from my witness list, which is completely inappropriate considering the history of the case.
Talk to me real quick about why you think the judge did this, because in the appellate brief, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is an accusation that the court might have been biased because of Drake's celebrity status. Correct me if that allegation is wrong. And in your opinion, why do you believe the court ultimately wouldn't allow the deposition of Drake?
I'll say that Judge Uson was a complete gentleman to me, and it was a pleasure to try the case in front of him. I do think that he made various reversible errors, and I think from the beginning he made a lot of calls that were unconstitutional, not legal. This being one of them. I don't want to speculate as to why, but when you're dealing with someone like Drake, which he's not a celebrity, he's a super celebrity. He's like in the stratosphere of fame. So when a judge does a 180 like that, I'll let the viewers or other people figure out why they think that it happened, but I'm not gonna speculate as to why it happened. But
no, I get that. I get that. I do want to ask you about this because this is another part of the appeal. And that is with respect to the testimony of this gang expert, which was excluded in a pretrial hearing. And the defense, my understanding, wanted to call Jesse De La Cruz, who they had claimed, discovered visual evidence that Drake could have had ties to the same organization as a co-defendant in this case, Robert Allen. And I believe the brief states, Dr. Cruz's research revealed photos of Mr. Graham throwing the same gang signs as Allen. And Allen is that accomplice who I mentioned before who testified against his co-defendants. But Cruz also revealed that people who knew Drake were allegedly seen in XXXTentacion's neighborhood threatening him before he died. The brief reads, social media posts showed these same known Graham associates were seen in Onfroy's neighborhood threatening him just prior to the murder. And then they say even more revealing is this connection that Cruz made to Drake's song lyrics, because shortly after XXX was killed, the brief writes, Mr. Graham released a song entitled Triple X with suspicious lyrics. SMS Triple X, that's the only time I shot below the neck. And Dr. Cruz found another connection between the murder and Drake's lyrics in the song I'm Upset. The song I'm Upset contains lyrics regarding Louis bags for body bags, the implication there being that Drake was referencing murder. But ultimately, Cruz was completely excluded from the trial, and the jury did not hear any of his findings. Mauricio, I have that right.
Now, if Drake's homies was in the neighborhood and making threats, I think that does kind of open up suspicion, right? Because now you have why were they there? And why were they making threats? And is this documented on social media? Are they on camera saying what they're going to do to him? Or what are we, you know what I'm saying? Because from that, you got to also look at like what be going down, especially a few years ago, what was going down with like the whole Chicago thing, and niggas was pulling up in niggas' hoods and saying shit. And it still happens today. Niggas post up in niggas' hoods or post up next to, a notable person's grave site and says something disparaging, says some craziness. Next thing you know, they end up dead, or they end up finding themselves in a shootout, or they find themselves in some sort of violent encounter. Yeah, one thing can lead to another. So if that's the case, that changes a little bit of my perspective to at least say he should have been questioned. He should have been brought to the table to say, well, why were these associates of yours making threats on your behalf in this young man's neighborhood? You should at least have to answer to that. I will say that much, right? But from the first, I'll say nearly 15 minutes of this video, he wasn't giving me much to really work with. You feel me? We'll keep going.
Can you emphasize that a little bit more? Can you explain that a little bit more?
yes, okay, so Dr. De La Cruz did proffer to the court everything that you've stated regarding the song lyrics, the fact that Drake was throwing gang signs that were the same gang signs that Allen was throwing up in different social media posts. The court strikes Dr. De La Cruz, which is a known gang expert and well known in his field, has testified over 150 times in trials. They allowed the state to put their own gang expert, Detective Polo, which really bolstered a lot of what Dr. De La Cruz said regarding the necessity to bring out this testimony. I don't believe that based on Daubert, which is the case that we look at when analyzing whether an expert is if it's appropriate for an expert to testify. I don't believe that was a legal call. I think it was error for him to do that and not allow us to put forth that testimony. And we put up pictures of Drake with Lil Wayne throwing up a Bloods gang sign and other evidence that Drake is out there flaunting gang ties. We put forth evidence of Hassan Ali, which is top 5 out there openly claiming on social media and video that he's Drake's shooter. And part of the theory of defense is to show, listen, even though these people are entertainers, okay, there's a gang related portion of it. There's a gang related side to it. And X's own mother testified that she knew about this, that she knew about when 600 Breezy traveled from wherever he was, whether it's Chicago to South Florida. She knew about it. She talked to him about it. So this case had more than ample evidence and ample reason to involve a gang expert.
To be clear, though, you were allowed to argue that someone else could have been responsible for this killing because you cross-examined Allen on cross-examination, suggesting that he had this link to Drake. But my understanding is you're arguing now that the trial court had put limits on your cross-examination of Allen, that violated your client's rights. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're 100% correct. And they did it not only with Allen, but they did it all throughout the trial.
Okay.
With Allen admitted that his father, known drug dealer, known firearms dealer, as the brief states, produced at least one of the guns that was used in this. When I asked him about his father and ties to Toronto and drug dealing, the state objected, and the judge didn't allow that question. So it was a constant battle for me to try and basically do my job and show where reasonable doubt existed. With Allen, with Detective Curcio, the problem here is also that the state attorney, on direct of Detective Curcio, which was the lead detective in the case, she asked, do you have any information that Drake was involved in this? And that was before the court struck him. So whatever the reasons may have existed, the moment that state attorney opens up their mouth and says that, now he's really at issue, because now
you're opening the door. You're opening the door to that coming in.
Yes. And not only was it an issue of her mentioning it with Detective Curcio, but she asked him, you actually were able to verify whether or not Drake was in South Florida at the time. So in cross-examination, I asked, why would you have to verify if he was in South Florida? Why? Because he's a person of interest. And then I had to further ask, well, what did you do to, and I'm paraphrasing, what did you do to figure out whether he was in South Florida? He says, oh, my partner checked social media. So then I said, okay, so in a homicide case, the best that Broward Sheriff's Office has for a jury is to peep his Instagram. So it was basically breaking down the poor job that BSO did in their investigation and the tunnel vision that they had, and the fact that none of this was in the report. So you felt it important enough to check and verify whether or not he was in South Florida, but you never memorialized it in your report, and I'm not allowed to ask about it.
Well, did he also testified?
Now that is interesting, because it's like, it sounds to me like y'all are doing your own side investigation into Drake, and y'all are willing to mention it in court, but you're not going to allow this man to at least entertain the same realm of thought. I do find that to be suspicious. On some Dr. Umar shit, I do find that suspicious, So I can understand why he seems emotionally charged. He seems to be very connected to this. He feels as though his client didn't get a fair shot, because all he really had to do is prove some sort of question, or prove some sort of doubt that perhaps it could have been someone else other than him. Now, again, if you are going to pose those questions, I still got to see, is Drake supposed to be placed at the crime scene, or is it supposed to be someone from his camp that would have been paid by Drake in order to be a part of what those other two young men were about to go do? And how can we put some sort of connection between them and the time of the actual hit job and all of that type of stuff? So there's still questions that definitely need answers, even if you do go entertain Drake being a part of it. Like, and I can't say what he did or didn't do. I'm just saying he's kind of, well, I don't want to say him because it's not his appeal. You know, somebody else is representing that. But this young man, Demetrius, is fighting an uphill battle because you're going to have to present something that's compelling enough to take you, that's going to remove you completely from the scene and from enacting, in partaking in this violence. And you've already been implicated as the driver, which is why you're in jail. So if it wasn't you, then who was it? It's tough.
Detective Curcio, that he learned that Onfroy, XXX, had been attacked by members of Migos, right? Migos is the rap group that's associated with Drake. Was that came in, and again, you weren't able to expand upon that?
Not only did that come in, but when I asked him in cross-examination, isn't it true that the first time that the name Migos comes out in this case was a month after the murder, in the first conversation that you yourself had with the cooperating co-defendant Allen? He didn't remember. I had to refresh his recollection, and right there in the transcribed conversation, it basically showed that Allen, the cooperator, said the name Migos in the first conversation that they had. So it basically showed that I wasn't making this up. Like, I'm not creating it. The facts were there before I even ever alleged their involvement or filed a motion in court. They're checking to see whether or not Drake is in South Florida. That was years before I mentioned it. And Allen is saying is talking about Migos to the lead detective a month after the murder. This is years before I filed anything regarding my theory of defense. So it was just to show that this is part of the case.
Right. And the argument is that your client didn't get a fair shake, didn't get a fair trial because you couldn't expand upon this and introduce this. I want to move quickly past Drake and ask you a couple different questions about this appeal. Speaking about Detective Curcio, I understand that there's also an objection that your team has with him providing opinion testimony on cell phone data. Can you talk about that real quick, what the issue was with Detective Curcio there?
Okay, well, the issue is that Broward County did not list a forensic expert, okay? And they tried to put forth expert testimony through someone by the name of Campani and through Detective Curcio, and the court allowed them to give expert opinion as to locations of cell phones and things that are specifically left to experts, because when you list somebody as an expert, then that opens up the doors to discovery that we can take depositions of them and put us on notice to the specific details that they're going to testify to as an expert. That didn't happen in this case. And what they allowed was this individual named Campani. They allowed him to basically put forth expert testimony, and he put forth a visual aid that he had prepared a week prior to his testimony. Okay, we were ambushed with it, and there he basically put little dots where he testified where the cell phones were exactly, and they allowed Detective Curcio to also give that type of testimony. Now, Detective Curcio is extremely experienced. I'm not going to take that away from him, and this individual Campani as well. But just because you're experienced doesn't take away the obligation of Broward County to do things correctly. This is a murder case, and a high-profile one at that.
There's a number of different other points that are raised in this appeal. There's things like allowing prior bad acts to come into this trial, allowing an out-of-court statement from defendant Newsom, which you argue was his Williams defense attorneys are saying was prejudicial. If you can, what's another big area of appeal? Is it any of those two that you really think could be problematic? Why your client? Again, I guess the idea is he deserves a new trial, right?
Yes, yes, and the two things that you mentioned are pretty egregious. The one of the Newsom is really shocking. Like they basically on redirect of Detective Curcio asked them questions and brought in a hearsay statement regarding a completely separate murder investigation that he says that he found without authenticating the cell phone, and basically said that Newsom had told somebody in some dating app or something that he had buried money in his house. And so the judge buried money, he could be catching life, and a really incriminating statement. But Detective Curcio didn't have to authenticate that. They didn't have to show what cell phone it came from. Basically, he just said, I saw this in another case. And the problem is that my client is sitting at the same table with this individual that now the court has allowed this, extremely prejudicial information to come in. So that was a humongous reversible error, in my opinion, that affected not only my client's case, but everybody that was sitting there at table, including all the co-defendants.
Moving forward, though, what can we expect in terms of a timeline of appeal? When will this be heard? When will this be decided? If a new trial is granted, how does that work? Because now it's about the timeline of events. What should we expect?
You know what? I don't practice appellate law, and those are questions that I don't really want to give misleading answers to.
Okay.
So I don't want to give the wrong answers regarding appellate. I don't really do appellate law, but at some point they're going to file a responsive brief, and I think that the court could invite. I think the way it is nowadays, the court can invite oral argument. When I first started practicing law, you had the right to give oral argument. I think now it's only by invitation when the appellate court wants to hear your arguments. But yeah, I mean, listen, when I read this, this was an 11-week trial. The jury was out 8 days. It's not like if the jury didn't think about it and came back in 90 minutes and convicted our client. The jury struggled. They had to have struggled because 8 days is. I've never had a case that the jury's been out that long, and it was clear that they had questions, and I really wasn't able to properly defend my client. Mr. Williams did not get a fair trial. When I read this, I think there's like some kind of a defense mechanism when you try a case for 11 weeks that you start forgetting things. When I read this, it brought it all back, and it reminded me of really how unfair the judge was with Mr. Williams, and the detrimental effects that it had for me to be able to properly defend my client.
Well, listen, Mauricio, I appreciate you coming on here, pleading your case, pleading for these these arguments that his appellate team will be making now to a higher court, breaking it down for us, because it can get a bit complicated in the weeds, but you really made it clear for us. So thank you so much, Mauricio Padilla, Mr. Williams' lawyer. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I don't really know what to say. We see these types of things in crime shows all the time. Is these attorneys, their job is to defend their client, to fight on behalf of these people. A lot of times these niggas did the shit, but their job is to defend them and to introduce some form of doubt that can redirect the thought process or redirect the timeline of events or redirect placing this person in this particular situation to at least open the door to entertain somebody else could have done this, right? So then there's questions of Drake, there's questions of Migos, there's questions of I guess they said 600 Breezy. You got Top 5 who was mentioned, who was an associate of Drake, who claims that he's, Drake's enforcer. That's what I'll say. So there are some things on the table that could have possibly, created some sort of further investigation. But I'm gonna be honest with y'all, man. Like, I can't say that he did it, but I do find it interesting that even the attorney there, he can't definitively say his client wasn't there, that he didn't do it. Or at least that's not what I heard in a whole 40-minute video. It's not like he literally said, my client did not do this and I am fighting for him to be absolved of a crime he did not do. I've definitely heard other attorneys come out and say that. you know, it's unfortunate he has been convicted of a crime that he did not do. I didn't hear that from him say, you know what I'm saying? I didn't hear him say that from his chest. So, what I will say is good luck to that young man in his appeal. I hope that the judge looks at it and at least entertains it and gives them the opportunity to present further evidence that could prove that it wasn't him, right? So maybe he can separate himself from the other two young men and the third who cooperated and kind of gave testimony that threw all of them under the bus. But outside of that, I can't sit here on my channel and say Drake did it. I can't say that. What I can say is, as it pertains to Drake and the situation with UMG, with him filing civil RICO and or threatening to file a civil RICO, that whatever Drake has been protected of over the tenure of his what are we at now? Like 15 years? 15-year career. I'm sure he's been protected of a lot of things that could have severely pierced him. A lot of artists, a lot of entertainers have been protected from certain things affecting them that could have been detrimental to their career, whether that be legal, whether that be, you know, a whole plethora of things. I believe that he will be removed from that aura of protection, right? I think there will be some allegations that end up coming out towards Drake. I do believe that even Universal, if they have to, in order to protect themselves, they will find some things that will implicate Drake, or at least make him look like, hey, as it pertains to the business, he's done this, this, and this. We've had to do this, this, and this for him. Hey, he's talking about bots and stuff that we use for Kendrick. Here's all of the outlines of things we did for him to make him the guy. Like, I think that there's going to be a lot in the coming years. I don't know how long this process is going to be between himself and UMG in their fight. I don't think Drake walks away with what he wants. I think this is a situation where he's going to walk away perhaps regretting that he took the stance that he did, because there are things like this XXX alleged perhaps connection that can make him appear very questionable. And again, I would not be surprised if more starts to surface just to keep sullying his name, which in turn will keep driving his value down, which will continue to thwart his hopes for a bountiful renegotiation. And you may end up seeing this man jailed, or at least brought in for questioning, or, you know what I'm saying? It's so many ways. And I don't know. I don't know what to make of all of this. I got to sit back and see it. I got to see everything happen and assess it as it comes to kind of get the larger picture. Because right now we're only working with a limited scope. We know that he's unsatisfied with something. We don't necessarily know all of Drake's gripes. He keeps pointing to Kendrick Lamar is not like us. If that's the only source of his grievance with UMG, I don't think he has a very strong case at all. Right? And now we got this whole thing rolling out. So I feel like what can be brought out on him could potentially be way worse than him trying to say that UMG invested and put a concerted effort into Kendrick Lamar to make him a more valuable asset to the company than Drake. Therefore, they're trying to lowball him in negotiations. I don't think I don't even think a judge would give a fuck about that. Right? But as it pertains to the XXX thing, we're going to need to see a little bit more come out before I could give any kind of definitive answer. Because I feel like I sat here for 40 minutes listening to that guy. And although there were some odd dealings that happened, I still don't see where there's like a linear path that leads to Drake specifically, which I gotta be honest about. Let me know what y'all think of all this down below in the comments. I'm sure it's gonna be some niggas that say, he did, that nigga did it. That nigga did it. He put the money up. He said he's sick of these niggas hustling. He'll get rid of these niggas. Fuck that nigga. And hey, that's how you feel. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna tell you to change how you feel. I can't, you can't tell me to do the same. All right? But again, let me know what y'all think. Be sure to like and share the video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, become an insider. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one. Once again, if you want to hear the gift that I gave to the insiders on Patreon, you're gonna have to go join on Patreon. The link will be in my pinned comment down below. Come fuck with your boy. We're gonna have more content, more exclusive listenings, more music video reactions, and things of that nature to come. All the stuff we can't do on YouTube due to copyright issue. So come fuck with your boy. I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming out swinging like soldier rags. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit, I'm an almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef for computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. With drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some batteries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.